Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fallout 76, where today we're going to take a look at a story that can be very easy to miss. It's the story of Darius Angler and the creation of the Toxic Valley. We've explored the Toxic Valley and Grafton Steel in other videos, and it always seemed pretty clear that the reason the area north of Grafton is so toxic and destroyed is because of the corruption at Grafton Steel, where they pumped toxic waste into the air and water of the region. They ignored the safety of the area's residents and routinely ignored the safety of their workers, all in an effort to chase down every dollar they could from lucrative and secret government contracts. But it turns out there's a little bit more to that story, and we stumble on it while exploring Grafton. As we're exploring the town, we find an abandoned apartment building. After clearing out the super mutants that now call it home, we can find a note titled Darius Angler's Manifesto, Part 1. This is the first of 6 different notes and holotapes that he's left behind. Let's take a look.
I hate Grafton Steel Mill. Too many of us that work there are getting hurt. They don't care about us. They only care about profits. That's why I quit. I tried to get my brother Billy to quit, but he needs the money. Grafton Steel don't deserve me. They don't appreciate me. I'm the best chemist this side of the Mississippi. They'll never be able to replace me. That will show those bastards.
Right around the corner in what is presumably Darius Angler's former bedroom, we find Part 2 of the Manifesto in the form of a holotape.
I killed my brother. Those bastards at the Grafton Steel Mill killed Billy. Mandatory overtime, they called it. He should have never been on those catwalks. I can't bury him. When you fall into a vat of molten steel, there's nothing left of you. I'll get them for this. I'll show those bastards.
Darius, angry at Grafton Steel's ongoing disregard for worker safety, decided he'd had enough and he quit. He tried to get his brother to leave too, but he couldn't convince him. Billy needed the money too badly to just walk away. Then Billy fell into a vat of molten steel and died a horrifying death. Darius placed the blame squarely on Grafton Steel and their forced overtime practices. And I can't say Darius is wrong here. Overworked employees often make mistakes. Exhausted employees often have accidents. When the environment is unsafe to begin with, that's a recipe for disaster, and it's one that Grafton Steel is most certainly responsible for. But the story doesn't end here. Eventually, if we explore the former Wavy Willard's corporate housing complex, a trailer park set up for employees of Wavy Willard's, where I presume Darius went to work after leaving the steel mill, we'll find more of his manifesto.
I've uncovered a conspiracy between the government and Grafton Steel. Kickbacks, wink and nod inspections, bribes, you name it. There's no telling how big this is. I think they bugged my house. So I've moved to a cabin in the woods where nobody can find me. Yesterday I had to shoot a woman. She claimed she was just hiking, but I know she was an agent sent to spy on me. Yeah, I booby-trapped my cabin. They're attaching listening devices to the raccoons to spy on me. But I'm too smart for them. They can't get past my traps. I saw a fox look funny at me today. They might be using them too. If I see another one come around, that'll prove it.
At this point, it's clear that while his anger may come from a rational place, Darius is losing his ability to think clearly. He's losing his mind, he's convinced that woodland animals are spies, and he's even murdered an innocent hiker. Sure, it's possible that the hiker was a spy, but let's be realistic here. If Grafton Steel or the government wanted Darius Angler dead at his cabin in the woods, they could have made that happen. And based on the history of the Fallout universe, they would have. This is an interesting development. We've seen 2 other stories that take place in Grafton where people seem to have lost their minds. Otis Pike kidnapped his nephew Freddie Wood in another failed attempt to effect change at Grafton Steel. We also learned about Chelsea Wesley and Mary Tinley, 2 young girls who murdered each other over petty squabbles while at a picnic. Were the compounds Grafton Steel was dumping into the area causing psychosis in the population? It sure looks like that's a possibility. Maybe it even explains some of the sociopathic behavior on the part of the steel mill's executives. I've done videos on each of those stories, and I'll link them at the end of this one for those who want to explore further. As we move to another trailer, we find another installment of the Manifesto, this one in the form of a written note.
It's perfect. It'll kill them all. I'm doing this for you, Billy. They killed you and now I'll kill them. All of them. If I add my secret formula to the... No, don't write that down, Darius. The rats could steal this journal and give it to the government. I can't have them ruining my plans. After it happens, then they can listen to my holotapes and read my journals. Then they'll know. Then they'll be sorry.
Add his secret formula? To what? To something at the steel mill? It sounds like Darius is planning to use his expertise as a chemist to exact revenge on the people at Grafton Steel for killing his brother. Interestingly, there are also a large number of empty barrels behind his trailer. Perhaps they contained the chemicals he was working with. We'll need to head to the Grafton Steel mill to find out how it all ends. Grafton Steel is absolutely infested with super mutants. We'll need to clear most of them if we want to explore. If you decide to travel here to do any digging on your own, high-level players shouldn't have any trouble, but this can be a tough spot for newer players, so stock up on ammo and weapons before you arrive. Once we've cleared out enough of the super mutants that their yelling won't drown out the sound of any holotapes we find, we locate the last installment of the Manifesto. It's on a desk in a building labeled Workroom on a sign outside. But before we check it out, I took a note of an interesting scene right outside the building behind us. Here we see a number of skeletons, some dressed in business suits, others in more ragged steelworker uniforms. One was holding a protest sign, perhaps trying to use it as a weapon. Most alarmingly, it seems that as the group was fighting, at least one of them was trying to crawl into the window of this building. Was this in response to whatever Darius was doing, or was it an entirely unrelated event? Perhaps we'll never know, but I found it interesting in this context nonetheless. Let's listen to what we can only assume are Darius Angler's last words.
The air raid sirens, the ground shaking. It's Billy. He's telling me it's time. Everyone is thinking about the bombs. They won't notice me. All I have to do is sneak into Grafton Steel and use my secret formula. Then their smokestacks will begin spewing toxic dust all over the valley. Then they'll be sorry they hurt Billy. They'll be sorry and dead.
And that, my friends, explains why the Toxic Valley is as toxic as it is when we encounter it in Fallout 76. Darius added a chemical compound to the process at Grafton Steel that caused the plant's smokestacks to spew toxic dust all over the region, resulting in untold amounts of death and destruction. All this was in combination with the fact that the world was being bathed in nuclear fire. While Appalachia wasn't directly hit, the region still suffered from residual radiation and nuclear fallout. Combining that with the poisons that were already in the area and now whatever Darius Angler added to the mix was sure to kill off or mutate most of the life in the region. We can see it everywhere. More than 2 decades later, the area is still covered in a fine white toxic dust. Very little vegetation exists. Homes and buildings are in worse shape than almost everywhere else in Appalachia as well, indicating that the area has been largely free of living human beings for much longer than anywhere else. Was Darius solely responsible for the toxic hellscape that is now the Toxic Valley? Certainly not. But he definitely contributed to it. Clearly, he wasn't in his right mind. Perhaps he was simply broken down by grief over his lost brother, and his anger at a company that did so many terrible things and was responsible for that death. Maybe that company is even the reason he lost his mind, but that's certainly speculative. At this point, one person is surely not to blame. The culture of rampant greed and corruption that fostered all the things that went wrong in that region are the reason it's in the shape it's in when we encounter it in the game. And that is going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed exploring this story with me. If you did, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter. There's always a lot more to come on the channel. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope I see you all next time.